In this video, I will read 3 short horror stories by Koizumi Yakumo, a Japanese novelist of Greek origin. In this channel, I would like to introduce Japanese novels, folk tales, myths, and history. Please subscribe to this channel. OSHIDORI. There was a falconer and hunter named Sanj, who lived in the district called Tamura no Go, of the province of Mutsu. One day, he went out hunting and could not find any game. But on his way home, at a place called Akanuma, he perceived a pair of OSHIDORI mandarin ducks, swimming together in a river that he was about to cross. To kill OSHIDORI is not good, but Sanj happened to be very hungry, and he shot at the pair. His arrow pierced the male. The female escaped into the rushes of the further shore, and disappeared. Sanj took the dead bird home and cooked it. That night, he dreamed a dreary dream. It seemed to him that a beautiful woman came into his room and stood by his pillow and began to weep. So bitterly did she weep that Sanj felt as if his heart were being torn out while he listened. And the woman cried to him, "Why, oh, why did you kill him? Of what wrong was he guilty? At Akanuma we were so happy together, and you killed him. What harm did he ever do you? Do you even know what you have done? Oh, do you know what a cruel, what a wicked thing you have done? Me too you have killed, for I will not live without my husband. Only to tell you this I came." Then again she wept aloud, so bitterly, that the voice of her crying pierced into the marrow of the listener's bones. And she sobbed out the words of this poem. Heikuruba. Sesa shimono wo. Akanuma no. Makomo no kure no. Heidarin zoyuki. At the coming of twilight, I invited him to return with me. Now to sleep alone in the shadow of the rushes of Akanuma, ah, what misery unspeakable. And after having uttered these verses she exclaimed, "Ah, you do not know, you cannot know what you have done. But tomorrow, when you go to Akanuma, you will see, you will see." So saying, and weeping very piteously, she went away. When Sanj awoke in the morning, this dream remained so vivid in his mind that he was greatly troubled. He remembered the words, "But tomorrow, when you go to Akanuma, you will see, you will see." And he resolved to go there at once, that he might learn whether his dream was anything more than a dream. So he went to Akanuma, and there, when he came to the riverbank, he saw the female OSHIDORI swimming alone. In the same moment the bird perceived Sanj. But, instead of trying to escape, she swam straight towards him, looking at him the while in a strange fixed way. Then with her beak, she suddenly tore open her own body, and died before the hunter's eyes. Sanj shaved his head, and became a priest. This is the end of the OSHIDORI story. Next, we will read the story of O-TEI. The story of O-TEI. A long time ago, in the town of Niigata, in the province of Echizen, there lived a man called Nihongo. Nihongo was the son of a physician, and was educated for his father's profession. At an early age he had been betrothed to a girl called O-TEI, the daughter of one of his father's friends. And both families had agreed that the wedding should take place as soon as Nihongo had finished his studies. But the health of O-TEI proved to be weak, and in her 15th year, she was attacked by a fatal consumption. When she became aware that she must die, she sent for Nihongo to bid him farewell. As he knelt at her bedside, she said to him, "Nihongo-sama, my betrothed, we were promised to each other from the time of our childhood, and we were to have been married at the end of this year. But now I am going to die. The gods know what is best for us. If I were able to live for some years longer, I could only continue to be a cause of trouble and grief for others. With this frail body, I could not be a good wife, and therefore, even to wish to live for your sake would be a very selfish wish. I am quite resigned to die, and I want you to promise that you will not grieve. Besides, I want to tell you that I think we shall meet again. Indeed we shall meet again, Nihongo answered earnestly. And in that pure land, there will be no pain of separation. Nay, nay, she responded softly, I meant not the pure land. I believe that we are destined to meet again in this world, although I shall be buried tomorrow. Nihongo looked at her wonderingly, and saw her smile at his wonder. She continued in her gentle, dreamy voice. Yes, I mean in this world, in your own present life, Nihongo-sama. Providing indeed that you wish it. Only, for this thing to happen, I must again be born a girl, and grow up to womanhood. So you would have to wait 15-16 years, that is a long time. But my promised husband, you are now only 19 years old. Eager to soothe her dying moments, he answered tenderly. To wait for you, my betrothed, were no less a joy than a duty. We are pledged to each other for the time of 7 existences. But you doubt? She questioned, watching his face. My dear one, he answered, I doubt whether I should be able to know you in another body, under another name. Unless you can tell me of a sign or token. That I cannot do, she said. Only the gods and the Buddhas know how and where we shall meet. But I am sure, very, very sure that, if you be not unwilling to receive me, I shall be able to come back to you. Remember these words of mine. She ceased to speak, and her eyes closed. She was dead. Nihongo had been sincerely attached to O-TEI, and his grief was deep. He had a mortuary tablet made, inscribed with her zokumi. And he placed the tablet in his butsudan, and every day set offerings before it. He thought a great deal about the strange things that O-TEI had said to him just before her death. And in the hope of pleasing her spirit, he wrote a solemn promise to wed her, if she could ever return to him in another body. This written promise he sealed with his seal, and placed in the butsudan beside the mortuary tablet of O-TEI. Nevertheless, as Nihongo was an only son, it was necessary that he should marry. He soon found himself obliged to yield to the wishes of his family, and to accept a wife of his father's choosing. After his marriage he continued to set offerings before the tablet of O-TEI, and he never failed to remember her with affection. But by degrees her image became dim in his memory, like a dream that is hard to recall. And the years went by. During those years many misfortunes came upon him. He lost his parents by death, then his wife and his only child, so that he found himself alone in the world. He abandoned his desolate home, and set out upon a long journey in the hope of forgetting his sorrows. One day, in the course of his travels, he arrived at O-TEI, a mountain village still famed for its thermal springs, and for the beautiful scenery of its neighborhood. In the village inn at which he stopped, a young girl came to wait upon him, and, at the first sight of her face, he felt his heart leap as it had never leaped before. So strangely did she resemble O-TEI that he pinched himself to make sure that he was not dreaming. As she went and came, bringing fire and food, or arranging the chamber of the guests, her every attitude and motion revived in him some gracious memory of the girl to whom he had been pledged in his youth. He spoke to her, and she responded in a soft, clear voice. of which the sweetness saddened him with the sadness of other days. Then, in great wonder, he questioned her, saying, "Elder sister, so much do you look like a person whom I knew long ago, that I was startled when you first entered this room. Pardon me, therefore, for asking what is your native place, and what is your name?" Immediately, and in the unforgotten voice of the dead, she thus made answer, "My name is O-TEI, and you are Neguchi of Echigo, my promised husband. 17 years ago, I died in Niigata. Then you made in writing a promise to marry me, if ever I could come back to this world in the body of a woman. And you sealed that written promise with your seal, and put it in the Butsudan, beside the tablet inscribed with my name. And therefore I came back." As she uttered these last words, she fell unconscious. Negio married her, and the marriage was a happy one. But at no time afterwards could she remember what she had told him in answer to his question at Eka. Neither could she remember anything of her previous existence. The recollection of the former birth, mysteriously kindled in the moment of that meeting, had again become obscured, and so thereafter remained. This marks the conclusion of the story of O-TEI's story. Afterward, I will proceed to read UBAZAKURA. UBAZAKURA. 300 years ago, in the village called Samamura, in the district called Onsenguri in the province of Ayo, there lived a good man named Tokubi. This Tokubi was the richest person in the district, and the muraosa, or headman, of the village. In most matters he was fortunate, but he reached the age of 40 without knowing the happiness of becoming a father. Therefore he and his wife, in the affliction of their childlessness, addressed many prayers to the divinity Fudumaiuo, who had a famous temple, called Seihauji, in Samamura. At last their prayers were heard. The wife of Tokubi gave birth to a daughter. The child was very pretty, and she received the name of Tsuyu. As the mother's milk was deficient, a milk nurse, called Osode, was hired for the little one. Tsuyu grew up to be a very beautiful girl, but at the age of 15, she fell sick, and the doctors thought that she was going to die. In that time the nurse Osode, who loved Tsuyu with a real mother's love, went to the temple Seihauji, and fervently prayed to Fudosama on behalf of the girl. Every day for 21 days, she went to the temple and prayed. And at the end of that time, Tsuyu suddenly and completely recovered. Then, there was great rejoicing in the house of Tokubi, and he gave a feast to all his friends in celebration of the happy event. But on the night of the feast the nurse Osode was suddenly taken ill, and on the following morning the doctor, who had been summoned to attend her, announced that she was dying. Then the family, in great sorrow, gathered about her bed to bid her farewell. But she said to them, "It is time that I should tell you something which you do not know. My prayer has been heard. I besought Fudosama that I might be permitted to die in the place of Tsuyu, and this great favor has been granted me. Therefore you must not grieve about my death. But I have one request to make. I promised Fudosama that I would have a cherry tree planted in the garden of Seihauji for a thank offering and a commemoration. Now I shall not be able myself to plant the tree there, so I must beg that you will fulfill that vow for me. Goodbye, dear friends, and remember that I was happy to die for Tsuyu's sake." After the funeral of Osode, a young cherry tree, the finest that could be found, was planted in the garden of Seihauji by the parents of Tsuyu. The tree grew and flourished, and on the 16th day of the second month of the following year, The anniversary of Ozo's death, it blossomed in a wonderful way. So it continued to blossom for 254 years. Always upon the 16th day of the second month, and its flowers, pink and white, were like the nipples of a woman's breasts, bedewed with milk. And the people called it UBAZAKURA, the cherry tree of the milk nurse. That's the end of all the stories. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you for listening until the end.